My name is Maya Ellis Bennett. I was 31 years old, 7 months pregnant, and 5 weeks widowed when I realized the private clinic door had been locked from the outside. I was sitting on the edge of an examination table at Greyhaven Maternal Wellness Center. A black-and-white image of my unborn daughter remained frozen on the monitor beside me. Directly across the room, my mother-in-law, Elaine Bennett, stood beside a polished wooden table with her arms folded. A blue document folder lay open in front of her. "Sign the papers, Maya," she said. "Then we can all go home." The folder carried the gold emblem of Bennett Development Group, the company Elaine had founded with her husband, Thomas. It did not carry Greyhaven's name. Neither did the papers inside it. My phone and handbag had been taken during intake. The clinic administrator had called it a security policy, but when I asked for my things back, no one moved. Thomas stood near the door, wearing the same calm expression he used during board meetings and family disagreements. Beside him sat Grant Reeves, the Bennett family's attorney. A family lawyer had been waiting inside what was supposed to be a prenatal appointment. That should have told me everything. I pushed myself up from the examination table and tried the handle. It moved less than an inch before stopping. "Please unlock the door." Elaine's expression did not change. "You're upset. Sit down before you make yourself unwell." "I'm not unwell. You've been through more than anyone should have to endure." "That doesn't explain why the door is locked." Grant placed a black pen beside the folder. "These documents are designed to reduce the pressure on you. No one is trying to hurt you." I looked at the first page again. It contained language about medical decision-making authority. The next referred to financial management. A third mentioned a future guardianship nomination involving my unborn child. None of it resembled consent for a checkup. Dr. Priya Shah stood beside the ultrasound monitor, reading something on the clinic tablet. She had become very still. A few minutes earlier, she had spoken in the steady, reassuring tone of a specialist completing an ordinary examination. Now her eyes moved between the appointment record, the scan, and the people surrounding me. "Doctor," I said, "is something wrong with my baby?" She looked directly at me. "No," she said carefully, "but there is something wrong with this appointment." Elaine stepped toward her. "This is a private family matter." Dr. Shah ignored her and continued reading. That was when another question became impossible to avoid. If Elaine had brought me there merely to force my signature onto legal documents, why had the clinic created a medical record describing me as someone who required a family-directed assessment? And who had authorized it? Before I explain what Dr. Shah found, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video. Stories like mine matter because control does not always arrive looking cruel. Sometimes it arrives offering help, making appointments, and promising to take care of everything. To understand how I ended up inside that locked room, I have to go back 5 weeks, to the morning after my husband died. Luke's death had been so sudden that my mind seemed to divide life into 2 separate places, the world in which he existed and the silent one that came after him. I could still make decisions at work. I could read a claims file and identify a missing authorization in seconds. But at home, I would stand in front of an open cupboard and forget why I had gone into the kitchen. Elaine arrived before sunrise. She entered carrying a notebook, 3 folders, and the calm certainty of someone who had already decided what everyone else needed. "You shouldn't have to manage anything right now," she told me. At first, those words felt like mercy. She contacted the funeral home. Thomas dealt with the company. Elaine answered the door, organized meals, and made a list of every person who called. Whenever my phone rang, she would glance at the screen before handing it to me. Sometimes, she did not hand it over at all. "It's only business," she would say. "Luke would never want you dealing with that right now." I believed her because she was grieving too. I also believed that staying close to Luke's parents was a way of staying close to him. That belief made it easy for Elaine to begin choosing which parts of my life I was ready to handle, and which parts I was not. During the first week, Elaine's help was practical. By the second, it had become a system. She kept a copy of my appointment schedule beside her notebook. She redirected mail connected to Bennett Development Group to Thomas's office. When relatives called, she answered questions about my pregnancy before I could. She needs quiet, she told them. She isn't ready to discuss the estate. We're managing things for her. The word we began appearing everywhere. Thomas visited less often, but every visit carried paperwork. He never pressured me openly. He placed folders on the dining table, explained that the company was handling routine administrative matters, and assured me there was no reason to rush. That sounded reasonable. Thomas always sounded reasonable. He never raised his voice. He simply made decisions seem complete before I knew they had been made. One afternoon, my closest friend, Lena Ortiz, came to see me. Lena worked beside me in compliance and had never been impressed by expensive titles or polished explanations. She noticed Elaine's notebook immediately. "How many of your calls is she answering?" Lena asked after Elaine stepped outside. "She's helping." That wasn't my question. I lowered my voice. "I'm tired, Lena." "I know, but being tired doesn't mean you stopped being an adult." The sentence stung because it sounded too close to criticism. I was already questioning every decision I made. I did not want my closest friend questioning them too. "Elaine lost her son," I said. "Keeping busy is probably how she's coping." Lena glanced toward the hallway. "Maybe, but she's coping by controlling your information." "She isn't controlling me." "Then ask her to give you the notebook." I did not ask. That evening, Elaine brought me tea and sat beside me on the couch. Her voice was gentler than it had been all day. "Luke was worried about the final months of your pregnancy," she said. I looked at her. "He never said that." "He didn't want to frighten you. He spoke to me about finding a private specialist, somewhere quieter than a regular hospital." My hand moved instinctively toward my stomach. My regular obstetrician had found no serious concern, but pregnancy after Luke's death felt different. Every unfamiliar sensation frightened me. Every quiet moment gave my mind room to invent something else I might lose. "What specialist?" "Greyhaven Maternal Wellness Center. Luke researched it before he died." The claim reached me exactly where Elaine intended it to. If Luke had arranged something for our child, refusing it felt like refusing him. Why didn't he tell me? He thought there would be time. Elaine lowered her eyes, and for a moment we were simply two women sitting inside the absence of the same person. "The Bennetts have supported Greyhaven for years," she continued. "They can see you privately, no waiting rooms, no stress. Thomas and I will take you." "Can I call my doctor first?" "Of course, but this is only an additional checkup. Your doctor doesn't need to authorize it." I searched my email later that night. There was no appointment confirmation from Greyhaven, no message from Luke, no referral. When I asked Elaine about it the following morning, she already had an explanation. Private clients don't go through the ordinary scheduling system. It was another small inconsistency. By then, I had become skilled at placing those inconsistencies somewhere I did not have to examine them. Lena called as I was preparing to leave. "Send me the clinic address," she said. "Elaine already gave it to me." "I didn't ask if she has it. I asked you to send it to me." I nearly told her she was overreacting. Instead, I sent the address. Then I climbed into the back seat of Thomas's car and allowed Luke's parents to take me to an appointment I had never personally confirmed. Greyhaven looked more like a private hotel than a medical center. The building stood behind tall iron gates, surrounded by carefully trimmed hedges. Inside, the floors shone beneath soft lights. There were no crowded chairs, ringing phones, or people moving quickly through the lobby. Everything was quiet enough to suggest that nothing bad could happen there. A man in a gray suit approached us before we reached reception. "Mrs. Bennett," he said warmly to Elaine, "everything is prepared." He introduced himself as Paul Mercer, Greyhaven's administrator. He shook Thomas's hand, nodded to me, and began discussing my appointment with Elaine. "Not with me. I'm the patient," I said. Mercer smiled as if I had made an unnecessary clarification. "Of course. Your family simply completed the preliminary arrangements." "What arrangements?" "A private maternal assessment." Elaine touched my elbow. "It's the specialist checkup we discussed." Mercer's smile tightened. "Yes, precisely." At reception, I was handed a tablet containing ordinary medical questions. My name and date of birth were correct, but the referring physician field was blank. "My obstetrician isn't listed." Mercer glanced at Elaine before answering. "This was arranged privately." "That doesn't explain who requested it." Thomas stepped closer. "Maya, you're here now. Let the doctor examine you, and then we can discuss everything else." I looked toward the exit. For the first time, leaving seemed more reasonable than continuing. Then my daughter moved, and fear overpowered suspicion. I completed only the basic medical questions. I left every unfamiliar authorization blank. A staff member asked for my phone and handbag. "Why?" "Electronic devices and personal belongings aren't permitted in the private consultation wing," Mercer explained. "They'll be secured and returned afterward." "I need my phone." "You can access it at any time through reception." Elaine opened the locker herself. "I'll put mine in too." Her gesture made the rule look mutual, but I noticed Thomas kept his phone. I handed over my belongings. Mercer led us down a carpeted corridor into the controlled access wing. A small green light flashed above the door. It opened after he pressed his identification card against the reader. The consultation room contained an examination table, ultrasound equipment, and 4 upholstered chairs. On the wooden table between them sat a blue Bennett development folder. I stopped walking. "What is that?" Thomas answered before Mercer could. "Routine estate material." "At my medical appointment." "We were going to discuss it afterward." "Then why is it already here?" No one answered. Mercer stepped back into the corridor. The door closed behind him with a quiet electronic click. I crossed the room and tried the handle. It moved, but the door remained shut. "Elaine." She settled into one of the chairs. "It's controlled access, Maya. That's standard in a private clinic." "Then ask him to open it." "You just arrived." "That isn't what I asked." Before Elaine could respond, another access tone sounded. The door opened, and Grant Reeves entered carrying a leather briefcase. He had attended Luke's funeral. He had also represented the Bennett Company for more than a decade. He was not my lawyer. The door locked again behind him. Grant placed his briefcase beside the blue folder. That was the moment I stopped believing I was there for a checkup. Grant sat across from me and folded his hands. "I'm sorry these matters have to be discussed under difficult circumstances." I remained standing. "What matters?" "Luke's estate, your medical support, the future care of the baby." "My medical support doesn't involve you." "Normally, no, but these circumstances are unusual." Elaine opened the blue folder and turned it toward me. A black pen had been clipped to the first page. "What are you asking me to sign?" Thomas moved to the chair nearest the door. "Read it before you decide that anyone is asking something unreasonable." The first page was titled as a temporary family support authorization. Beneath that harmless language were clauses giving Thomas authority to communicate with financial institutions on my behalf. The second document concerned medical decision-making during the remainder of my pregnancy. The third described an intended family guardianship arrangement following the child's birth. It did not immediately transfer custody. I understood enough legal language to know that, but it could be presented later as evidence that I had voluntarily acknowledged the Bennetts as necessary decision-makers. A separate waiver referred to future claims against Luke's estate. My mouth went dry. "These aren't checkup forms." "No one said they were," Grant replied. Elaine did. Elaine leaned forward. We brought you here because you need support. The paperwork simply makes that support official. Why is there an estate waiver? It protects everyone from uncertainty. Who does it protect? Thomas's calm expression hardened slightly. This family has responsibilities beyond any one individual. I looked back at the guardianship language. My daughter is not a company responsibility. She is Luke's child, Elaine said. She is my child too. No one is denying that. You're asking me to give you authority over her before she's even born. Grant raised a hand. That is not a precise description of the documents. Then I want an independent attorney to describe them. We can arrange that later. I'm not signing anything today. Elaine's face changed, not dramatically. She simply stopped pretending my answer mattered. You have not been yourself since Luke died. My husband died 5 weeks ago. Grief does not make me incompetent. No one used that word. You brought a lawyer into a locked medical room. Thomas stood. Lower your voice. I want my phone, and I want the door opened. Grant closed the folder halfway, but Elaine placed her hand on it. Maya, if you leave without completing the assessment, it may create the impression that you're refusing necessary care. What assessment? The one Greyhaven agreed to conduct. I was told this was a checkup. It includes a checkup. That is not the same thing. I crossed to the door and pressed the release button beside it. Nothing happened. I pressed it again. Unlock the door. Elaine remained seated. When you're calm. The words settled over the room. Not when the appointment is finished. Not when Mercer returns. When I was calm enough for Elaine to approve. I faced Thomas. Tell them to open it. He did not move. Maya, signing temporary protections is not surrendering your life. Then why am I not free to say no? Silence answered me. A few minutes later, the door opened and Dr. Priya Shah entered with a clinic tablet. She looked first at me, then at the 4 people arranged around the room. I was told this was a maternal consultation, she said. It is, Elaine replied. Dr. Shah looked at the papers. Then why is legal counsel present? Grant began to introduce himself. Dr. Shah stopped him. I asked the patient. Everyone turned toward me. It was the first time since arriving that someone had done that. Part 3, recognition. I don't know why he's here, I told her. I was told my husband arranged a private checkup before he died. Dr. Shah glanced down at the tablet. Who was your referring physician? No one will tell me. My obstetrician knows nothing about this appointment, I continued. The administrator said my family arranged it privately. Luke arranged it, Elaine corrected. Dr. Shah looked at Elaine. Were you present when he made the appointment? Elaine hesitated. He discussed Greyhaven with me. That was not an answer. Dr. Shah asked everyone except me to leave while she completed the medical consultation. Elaine refused immediately. Meyer is distressed. I can see that, Dr. Shah said, which is why I need to speak with my patient privately. Thomas stepped forward. We are her support system. Then you can support her by respecting her request. I want them out, I said. The words were quiet, but they changed the room. Grant closed his briefcase. Thomas looked toward Elaine. For several seconds, no one moved. Dr. Shah reached for the wall phone. If the patient's request is not respected, I will end the consultation. Grant finally stood. We can wait outside. The door opened after Dr. Shah used her identification card. Grant left first, followed by Thomas. Elaine remained beside the table. Mrs. Bennett, Dr. Shah said, that includes you. Elaine looked at me as if I had chosen a stranger over family. Then she walked out. The lock clicked again, but this time Dr. Shah placed her card beside the internal release panel. You can ask me to open that door whenever you want, she said. I realized I had been holding my breath. Is my baby in danger? I haven't examined you yet, but your recent records do not indicate an emergency. You have my records. Only the documents uploaded for today's consultation. I didn't authorize anyone to send them. Dr. Shah's expression tightened. She asked standard questions about my pregnancy and recent care. I answered clearly. She never asked whether I trusted Elaine or whether I wanted help managing Luke's estate. The examination itself was calm and brief. My daughter's heartbeat was steady. The measurements were consistent with what my regular doctor had told me. Dr. Shah studied the image before turning the screen toward me. From what I can see today, the pregnancy appears stable. Your regular obstetrician should continue managing your care. Relief moved through me, followed immediately by anger. Then why am I here? That is what I am trying to determine. She returned to the clinic tablet and opened the scheduling record. At first, her expression showed concentration. Then she scrolled back to the top and read it again. What does it say? She did not answer immediately. Dr. Shah, this appointment was not entered as a routine maternal consultation. The door opened before she could continue. Elaine, Thomas, Grant, and Mercer returned together. Mercer looked annoyed rather than concerned. Doctor, there appears to be some confusion. Dr. Shah held the tablet against her chest. There is. Elaine stepped toward me. Maya, we should finish the documents before this becomes more upsetting. I'm not signing them. You're reacting without understanding. I understand that my baby is stable. I understand that my doctor did not refer me, and I understand that you brought Grant here before I arrived. Thomas looked at Dr. Shah. Our daughter-in-law has suffered a serious loss. We arranged a comprehensive family assessment because we are concerned about her ability to manage the pressure. You told me it was a checkup, I said. Elaine's voice softened. Because you would have refused if we told you everything. The room became completely quiet. It was the first honest statement she had made all day. Dr. Shah looked from the scan to the appointment record, then straight at me. You were never brought here for a checkup. The words landed differently from anything Elaine or Grant had said. Not because I had not suspected the truth. Because a person outside the Bennett family had finally confirmed it. What was I brought here for? Dr. Shah turned the tablet so I could see the heading. The appointment had been entered as a family-directed maternal capacity and placement assessment. Attached notes referred to pending legal authorizations and the expected participation of family counsel. The description made it sound as though I had agreed to be evaluated. I had not even known such an evaluation was scheduled. Mercer stepped toward the tablet. That classification is administrative. It may have been entered incorrectly. Then the record must be preserved and reviewed, Dr. Shah said. There is no need to create a formal incident. There is every need. Elaine's composure finally began to fracture. Doctor, Greyhaven has had a relationship with our family for years. I am treating Maya Bennett, not your family foundation. Dr. Shah asked me whether I had freely agreed to the assessment. No. Did you understand that legal documents would be presented? No. Do you want the consultation to continue? No. Do you want to leave? Yes. She recorded each answer. Grant reached for the blue folder. Leave it where it is, Dr. Shah said. These are privileged legal materials. They were presented during a disputed medical appointment. The patient is entitled to document what she was asked to sign. Grant looked at Thomas, but Thomas was no longer looking at anyone. Dr. Shah activated Greyhaven's safeguarding and compliance process. The response was quiet but immediate. A patient advocate arrived, followed by a second administrator who had not been involved in arranging the appointment. Mercer insisted the locked door was normal security. Dr. Shah asked for the access log to be preserved. Elaine said I was confused. Dr. Shaw documented that I had answered every medical question coherently, understood the documents well enough to request independent counsel, and consistently refused consent. Thomas tried one final approach. Maya, leaving like this will make everything more difficult. I looked at him. For whom? He had no answer. My phone and handbag were returned. The patient advocate photographed the blue folder and gave me copies of the pages before Grant was permitted to remove his originals. When the controlled access door opened, I expected Elaine to follow me. She did not. She remained beside the consultation table, staring at the unsigned papers. Outside, I called Lena. She answered before the second ring. Where are you? In the lobby. Are you safe? I'm leaving. I'm coming to get you. As I waited near reception, Thomas approached without Elaine. You need to understand that this matter will not disappear because you walked out. I held my phone tightly. Was that supposed to be a warning? It is a fact. Luke's estate affects more than you. That was the first time anyone connected the clinic directly to Luke's estate. Before I could ask what he meant, the patient advocate stepped between us and told Thomas that I had requested no further private contact. He walked away, but his words followed me out of Greyhaven. The clinic had only been one part of their plan. Lena did not ask me to explain everything in the car. She drove me home, checked that Elaine had no key inside the lock, and placed my phone on the dining table. Then she opened her laptop. Start with the last normal thing you remember, she said. That question was easier than asking how I felt. We built a timeline. Elaine's first mention of Greyhaven. The missing appointment confirmation. Mercer greeting her as though she were the patient. My belongings being removed. Grant entering with the blue folder. The clauses I had read. Every request I made to leave. Every response. Dr. Shaw's questions. Thomas's statement about Luke's estate. Lena did not tell me what any of it meant. She helped me preserve what had happened before shock could blur the order. I photographed the copies from Greyhaven. I saved them in 3 separate locations. I emailed the patient advocate requesting that the appointment record, security footage, access data, and internal communications be preserved. Then I sent Elaine one message. From that moment forward, all communication had to be in writing. Her response arrived almost immediately. You are making a terrible mistake. I did not answer. Within hours, calls began arriving from people who had never asked for my version. A Bennett Company advisor left a message expressing concern about my medical episode. One relative wrote that Elaine was heartbroken after trying to help me. There had been no medical episode. That phrase was part of the narrative they needed. The following morning, Elaine sent an email describing my refusal to sign as impulsive and claiming that Dr. Shaw had misunderstood a private family arrangement. I responded with one sentence. Please identify the legal authority under which I was prevented from leaving the consultation room. She did not answer the question. Thomas wrote instead. He said the electronic door had been a clinic security feature and that no one intended to confine me. He did not explain why they had refused to open it. Lena read both messages. They're creating a record, she said. So am I. It was the first time since Luke's death that I heard my professional voice return. I contacted my regular obstetrician and confirmed that no one from the practice had referred me to Greyhaven. I requested written verification. I contacted the clinic's compliance office and obtained a reference number for the safeguarding report. I listed every clause I remembered from Grant's documents and matched them against the photographed pages. The work steadied me because facts did not demand that I stop grieving. They only demanded that I look at them. Late that afternoon, a courier arrived. The envelope carried the name of Grant Reeves's law firm. Lena remained beside me while I opened it. The first document notified me that Elaine and Thomas Bennett were seeking temporary authority to protect assets connected to Luke's estate. The second alleged that my recent grief had impaired my ability to make reliable financial decisions. The clinic visit was cited as evidence of my instability. They had deceived me into entering Greyhaven, locked the door when I refused their documents, and then used my refusal as proof that I needed them to control my life. A hearing date appeared at the bottom of the final page. It was scheduled before my daughter's birth. I looked at Lena. This wasn't something they decided after I walked out. No, she said, it was already moving. On the final page was a reference to a trust created by Luke Bennett. A trust no one had told me existed. The word trust kept pulling my attention back to the final page. A reference number appeared beneath Luke's name, followed by the name of an attorney I recognized from several unanswered messages, Samuel Price. Elaine had described Samuel's calls as routine estate administration. Now his name appeared on the document Grant's firm had sent while trying to take control of my finances. I called him immediately. Maya Bennett. Yes. There was a pause on the other end. I have been trying to reach you since the week Luke died. I know that now. Samuel asked whether I was alone and whether I had independent representation. When I explained what had happened at Greyhaven, his careful professional tone became firmer. Do not sign anything from Grant Reeves or Bennett Development. Do not attend another private meeting. Send me everything you received today. Why didn't anyone tell me about this trust? Luke intended to explain it himself. The documents were completed months ago, but the final copies were stored independently because he did not want the company controlling access. Elaine knows it exists. She knows there is a trust. She does not control it. Samuel asked whether Luke had left me a small brass key. I knew exactly which key he meant. For months, it had rested inside a ceramic dish in Luke's home office. I had assumed it belonged to an old desk drawer. After his death, Elaine offered to clear the office for me, but I had refused because I was not ready to move his things. Lena followed me upstairs. The key opened a narrow metal lockbox on the highest shelf of the office closet. Inside were sealed copies of the trust, correspondence from Samuel, and records bearing Luke's signature. The papers did not feel like an unexpected fortune. They felt like proof that my husband had been living inside a conflict he never fully shared with me. Samuel reviewed the documents with us by video call. Luke's 18% voting interest in Bennett Development had been placed into a succession structure. Had he died without a surviving child, the company could have repurchased most of those shares. But Luke had a child on the way. When Nora was born, his interest would pass into a protected trust for her. I was named as the sole initial trustee. Elaine and Thomas had no automatic control over the shares, the trust, or my decisions. So they need my signature, I said. They need more than your signature, Samuel replied. They need a record suggesting that you voluntarily accepted their authority or that you are incapable of exercising your own. The Greyhaven documents suddenly made complete sense. The medical authorization could help them speak for me. The financial authorization could help them reach Luke's estate. The guardianship nomination could later be presented as proof that I once agreed they should control decisions involving Nora. Even if the papers could not instantly accomplish everything Grant implied, together they could create a narrative. A grieving widow. An unstable mother. A family forced to intervene. They planned to use the clinic to make the story look medical, I said. Samuel nodded, and the papers to make it look voluntary. Lena closed her laptop. What happens now? We document what they did, I said. I looked down at Luke's signature. For 5 weeks, I had allowed other people to decide which truths I was prepared to face. That ended beside the open lockbox. Samuel formally agreed to represent me and immediately sent preservation notices to Greyhaven, Grant's firm, and Bennett Development. The hearing date was close enough that the court permitted expedited requests for the records directly connected to the Bennett's allegations. I approached the evidence the same way I approached a disputed insurance claim. I stopped asking what people said they intended. I asked what the records proved they had done. Greyhaven's access report showed that the consultation room door remained electronically restricted after I first asked to leave. Dr. Shaw's identification card eventually released it when she demanded privacy. Mercer had called the lock standard security. The system recorded every access attempt. The appointment history created another problem for him. My visit had not begun as a referral from an obstetrician. The record had been created through the administrative office after communication with Elaine's foundation. The classification described a family-directed capacity and placement assessment. My name appeared as the patient, but there was no record showing that anyone had explained the assessment to me or obtained my informed agreement. Dr. Shaw's report was even clearer. She documented that I understood the questions asked, identified the legal significance of the papers, requested independent representation, and consistently refused consent. The supposed evidence of my incapacity instead showed that I had been the only person in the room respecting proper procedure. Grant's billing records connected the next piece. Bennett Development had paid for the preparation of the documents. The expense had been classified as succession planning rather than personal family support. The company had financed paperwork designed to affect my private medical and financial authority. Samuel placed the payment record beside the trust. "There is the motive," he said. I studied the succession clause again. Luke's unborn child had changed the destination of the voting shares. If I retained authority as trustee, Elaine and Thomas could no longer treat Luke's interest as something that would automatically return to their control. Luke had trusted me with a piece of the company large enough to influence major decisions. His parents had not merely lost a son. They had lost the certainty that they would control everything he left behind. The communications produced through the hearing request made the coordination harder to deny. Elaine's office had contacted Mercer before the appointment. Grant had prepared the documents before I was told Greyhaven existed. Thomas had approved the legal expense. Mercer knew family counsel would attend. The visit had been described internally as a signature meeting that needed to occur before my due date. No single record told the entire story. Together, they left no innocent explanation. Lena watched me arrange the timeline across my dining table. "You found the pattern. It was always there. You were grieving." I looked at the access report. They counted on that. For the first time, the knowledge did not make me feel weak. It made the Bennett's plan look exactly as it was, dependent on secrecy, isolation, and my continued willingness to doubt myself. My phone rang. Elaine's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring until it stopped. A minute later, an email arrived from Grant. Elaine and Thomas were prepared to withdraw their request for temporary financial authority. In exchange, they wanted a confidential settlement addressing the Bennett shares, future family involvement with Nora, and all claims connected to Greyhaven. They were offering to stop attacking my competence if I helped them hide why they had attacked it. Samuel read the proposal and asked what I wanted to do. "I want everything handled through the court." Grant's next message warned that public proceedings could damage the family's reputation. I answered through Samuel. The damage had occurred when they locked the door. Before the hearing, Samuel showed me another document from Luke's lockbox. It was not a dramatic final message. It was a memorandum Luke had prepared for his estate records after a disagreement with his parents. He documented Elaine's repeated demands that he restructure his ownership interest. He recorded Thomas's belief that no person who married into the family should control Bennett voting shares. Luke's concerns were specific, dated, and written long before his death. He had recognized the danger. but he had not told me how serious it was. For several minutes, I could not continue reading. I had spent weeks believing Luke's silence meant there had been nothing to know. The memorandum proved the opposite. He had tried to protect me by placing documents beyond his parents' reach, but he had also decided that protection required keeping me outside the truth. Lena sat across from me without speaking. "I wish he had trusted me enough to tell me," I finally said. "He trusted you with the company." "That isn't the same thing." "No," she said, "it is." That distinction mattered. I did not have to transform Luke into a perfect husband to keep loving him. I could recognize that he had protected my authority while failing to prepare me for the people who would challenge it. The trust proved his faith in my judgment. His silence explained why I had doubted that judgment when I needed it most. Elaine sent one final personal message before the hearing. She wrote that Luke would be ashamed to see me attacking his family. For weeks, those words would have broken through every defense I had. This time, I placed the message beside Luke's memorandum. Luke had already chosen who should control the trust. He had chosen me. I did not respond to Elaine privately. Samuel added her message to the record because it showed that she still viewed disagreement as disloyalty. That evening, I put the blue clinic folder, the ultrasound image, Luke's memorandum, and the trust copies into separate files. For the first time since his death, organizing his papers did not feel like organizing the remains of our life. It felt like preparing to protect the life that continued. The next morning, I entered the courthouse without Elaine, Thomas, or anyone from Bennett Development walking ahead of me. Elaine's attorneys presented her as a grieving mother who had stepped forward because her daughter-in-law was overwhelmed. She wore a dark suit and spoke quietly. Her control had returned. She described the meals she organized, the calls she answered, and the appointments she helped manage. Every decision she had taken from me was presented as evidence of generosity. Thomas supported her account. He explained that Luke's death created complicated financial responsibilities and that the family had acted to protect both me and Nora. Grant characterized the Greyhaven papers as temporary safeguards that were never completed. According to them, the clinic conflict occurred because I misunderstood an attempt to help. Samuel did not challenge every compassionate act. He focused on the point where assistance continued after I withdrew consent. The court reviewed the trust chronology first. Luke established it months before his death. He named me as trustee while he was alive, married to me, and fully aware of my professional background. Nothing suggested that my authority resulted from confusion or administrative accident. Then Dr. Shah's report was introduced. Elaine's attorney suggested that Dr. Shah encountered me only briefly and could not evaluate my long-term emotional condition. Samuel agreed. Dr. Shah had not attempted to diagnose my grief. She had documented what she directly witnessed. I understood the medical questions, recognized the legal documents, requested an independent attorney, refused consent, and asked to leave. My decisions inside Greyhaven were evidence of comprehension, not incapacity. When Dr. Shah addressed the court, she remained as controlled as she had been in the clinic. She explained that a patient could be grieving and still possess complete decision-making capacity. She confirmed that my pregnancy was stable and that she found no medical reason for emergency intervention. Then she explained the appointment classification. The phrase family-directed maternal capacity and placement assessment appeared on the screen. The judge asked who entered it. Greyhaven's records identified Mercer's administrative credentials. Mercer had attached notes provided through Elaine's office. Grant's firm had been listed as attending counsel before I entered the building. Elaine's attorney argued that the classification was merely administrative. Samuel displayed my intake forms. I had left the unfamiliar authorizations blank. No signed record showed that I requested or understood the assessment. The patient advocate's report confirmed that I repeatedly asked what was happening. The judge turned to Elaine. If your daughter-in-law agreed to this assessment, why was she told she was attending a checkup? Elaine's answer returned to grief. She said I would have resisted help if I understood its full scope. Her explanation confirmed the deception. Thomas shifted beside her. Grant lowered his eyes toward his notes. The last record examined that morning was Greyhaven's access log. It showed the moment the door closed after Grant entered. It showed my attempts to activate the internal release. It showed that no one opened the door when I first asked to leave. It showed Dr. Shaw's card releasing the lock after she demanded a private consultation. Thomas had described the door as standard security. The record proved that the security system had been used to keep me inside while the papers were presented. The judge studied the sequence for several seconds. Then she asked Grant why a private attorney had participated in a signature meeting inside an access-controlled medical room when the patient had no independent counsel. For the first time since Greyhaven, Grant had no polished explanation. The hearing continued the following morning. By then, the Bennetts' story of protection had begun collapsing under the weight of their own records. The second day centered on motive. Samuel presented the invoice Bennett development had paid for Grant's document preparation. The description linked the work to succession continuity. Then he presented Luke's trust. If Luke had died without a child, the company possessed a path to repurchase most of his voting interest. Because Nora was on the way, that interest would instead enter her trust under my authority. The documents placed before me at Greyhaven would not have magically transferred permanent custody or company ownership. Their purpose was more strategic. They would allow Elaine and Thomas to claim that I had voluntarily accepted their control. The clinic assessment would make that control appear medically necessary. The estate waiver would weaken my ability to challenge their actions later. Each document supported the others. Grant had tried to call them temporary protections. Together, they formed the foundation of a permanent takeover. The communication records connected every participant. Elaine arranged the appointment. Thomas authorized the company payment. Grant prepared the documents. Mercer created the assessment record and allowed the legal meeting inside Greyhaven. The timing references were equally clear. They wanted the signatures before Nora's birth activated the trust. Thomas requested a private conference with his attorneys during the break. When proceedings resumed, his position had changed. He no longer claimed the clinic appointment was Luke's idea. He acknowledged that Elaine proposed using Greyhaven because of the family foundation's relationship with the center. He admitted approving Grant's expense. His cooperation did not come from courage. It came after the documents made denial more dangerous than honesty. Elaine stared straight ahead while he spoke. Samuel asked whether I had ever agreed to surrender financial authority. Thomas said no. Whether I agreed to a family-directed capacity assessment. No. Whether Luke's parents knew the child's birth would affect the voting shares. Yes. That final answer removed the last uncertainty. The court denied the request for temporary control over my finances. It found no credible evidence that I lacked decision-making capacity and ordered that the disputed documents could not be presented as proof of voluntary consent. The records involving Greyhaven and Grant were referred for professional and regulatory review. The decision did not resolve every possible legal consequence that day. Investigations and company proceedings would continue. But the central threat ended. Elaine and Thomas could no longer speak for me. They could not control Luke's trust. They could not use my refusal inside Greyhaven as proof that I needed them. Outside the courtroom, Thomas approached Samuel rather than me. He asked whether a structured family arrangement could still be negotiated before Nora's birth. Samuel looked toward me. No. Thomas accepted the answer and walked away. Elaine did not. "You have taken our son's last connection away from us," she said. I looked at the woman who had ordered me to sign papers behind a locked door. "Nora is a person. She was never your connection to control. We are her family. Family was the reason you gave for ignoring every answer I gave you. You will regret shutting us out." That was the moment she could have admitted what she had done. Instead, she issued another warning. I told her that all future communication would go through counsel. Then I left the courthouse without waiting for her response. The Bennett Company's board began its review after the court records became available. The issue was no longer a private disagreement. Company funds had paid for documents designed to influence my medical and personal authority. Corporate resources had been used to protect family control of Luke's shares. Elaine was removed from active leadership while the review proceeded. Thomas stepped down rather than face a vote. He later provided additional records. But nothing he produced changed the fact that he had supported the plan until it threatened him personally. Grant faced a professional disciplinary investigation over his participation in the Greyhaven meeting and the conflicted nature of the documents. Mercer was removed from his position at the clinic. Greyhaven opened an independent review of donor influence, controlled access procedures, and consent requirements. New safeguards required direct confirmation from patients before family-arranged assessments could proceed. Dr. Shaw's report remained exactly what it had been from the beginning, a factual account from a doctor who refused to let a donor relationship replace patient consent. The consequences did not make me feel victorious every morning. Some days I still missed the version of the Bennett family I thought I had. I missed believing that Elaine's certainty meant safety and Thomas's calmness meant fairness. Accepting the truth required grieving a family that had never existed in the way I imagined. Samuel established firm communication boundaries. Elaine and Thomas could contact me only through counsel. Their access to my medical information was revoked. They were not permitted to attend appointments, appear at my home, or make decisions concerning Nora. Thomas complied. Elaine continued sending messages through her attorneys, each one describing access as something she deserved rather than trust she had destroyed. I stopped reading them myself. Forgiveness and access were not the same thing. Neither was grief and reconciliation. Lena helped me return the house to something that belonged to me. Elaine's notebook disappeared from the kitchen counter. Company folders were removed from the dining table. My appointment schedule stayed on my phone, where I controlled it. The brass key returned to the small ceramic dish in Luke's office. This time, I knew exactly what it opened. I kept Luke's memorandum with the trust records. I did not preserve it because I wanted Nora to grow up fearing her grandparents. I preserved it because truth mattered, especially when silence had already caused so much harm. The blue Greyhaven folder remained, sealed with the legal evidence. I never signed a page inside it. As my due date approached, I continued care with my regular medical team. Every appointment began with questions directed to me. No one answered on my behalf. Without Elaine controlling the room, the quiet felt different. It did not feel empty. It felt like space. I chose who received updates. I chose who entered my home. I chose which decisions could wait and which ones belonged only to me. For months, the Bennetts had treated control of Luke's estate as proof that they were protecting his legacy. But Luke's legacy was not a voting percentage. It was not a company name. It was not the authority to make decisions for someone else. His legacy was the child he had trusted me to protect and the choice he made, however imperfectly, to place that trust in my hands. By the time Nora's birth approached, I no longer needed the Bennetts to approve of the life I was building. I only needed it to be safe, honest, and ours. Nora arrived safely later that season. When she was placed beside me, the room held none of the polished silence of Greyhaven. There were no legal folders waiting on a table. No one was standing near a locked door. No one was telling me what I needed to surrender before I could leave. Lena visited after I had rested. Samuel confirmed that the trust administration would proceed exactly as Luke established it. Elaine and Thomas received no private medical information. That decision was not punishment. It was the consequence of treating access as ownership. The birth registration form arrived the following morning. A staff member placed it beside me and asked whether I wanted time to review it. The question was ordinary. After everything that had happened, its ordinariness meant more than I could explain. I read every line. No one hurried me. No one interpreted the document before I could. No one placed a pen in my hand and ordered me to prove my loyalty. I reached into my bag and took out my own blue pen. The same kind I used at work when marking a record that required further review. I wrote her name carefully. Nora Bennett. Then I signed beneath it. My signature did not surrender authority. It confirmed responsibility. On the table beside me rested the ultrasound image from Greyhaven. Elaine had once looked at that image and seen the heir to a company interest she intended to control. I saw my daughter. Nothing more complicated was required. The unsigned clinic papers remained sealed inside an evidence box. The blue Bennett folder could no longer command anything. It was only a record of a plan that failed because the people behind it underestimated the person they were trying to silence. Luke's absence still hurt. Justice did not remove grief, and becoming stronger did not mean I stopped missing him. But I no longer confused loving Luke with obeying his parents. I no longer believed that keeping peace required giving other people power over my decisions. And I no longer apologized for protecting the life entrusted to me. Morning light entered through the doorway beside my bed. The door stood completely open,